After an introduction to oak trees, we'll explore the four most common native oaks in our region, then touch upon the most prominent oak-related diseases and what we call affiliates of oak trees. Then we'll delve into gardening under and around oaks while protecting their good health. I'll have a list of references for you with websites to share, and then we'll break into the questions and answers. So our local oak trees are magnificent trees. They deserve to be treated with respect and with care. Many of us are fortunate to have oaks in our backyard gardens or near our backyard gardens. And many of our business clients do also, if you're a professional. This presentation will provide you with some solid research-based information to draw upon when working with or caring for our native oak trees. Oaks are described as a keystone species, meaning that whole ecosystems rely upon them. If the oaks disappear, the ecosystem collapses. Think of all the creatures in our gardens and woodlands that live in, receive food from, or are protected by these magnificent trees. The two beautiful oak trees pictured in this slide are on the left. There is a heritage valley oak thriving in the UC Davis Arboretum out in the Central Valley. And on the right is a spectacular photo of what's called the Pechanga Great Oak, famous for being the oldest known oak tree in the United States. And it is a live oak, actually, estimated to be over 2,000 years old. So humans have relied upon oak trees throughout history. Ancient and indigenous peoples would boil the tannic acid out of the acorn meat, crush the meat for flour, then produce an abundance of different food items from the flour. Many cultures, including modern Mexico, still include acorn-based food in their diets. The tannic acid in acorns and oak leaves can also be used for making dyes. Of course, we all know that oak wood remains a popular material for flooring, doors, furniture, and other home-based materials. And since oak trees are a keystone species, hundreds of local organisms, larger creatures such as this deer here, birds, and plants rely on oaks for food and shelter. They're attracted into your yard. They put on a great show, whether it's two tree squirrels playing a game of chase up and down a tree trunk. How many of you have seen that? I have, many times. Or colorful acorn woodpeckers mobbing a food repository tree. They all add interest and entertainment to our lives. And they add beauty to our gardens. I snapped the photo on the left here this past weekend in the Burton Valley neighborhood near me in Lafayette. And my daughter took this photo on the right of our own front yard oak habitat and understory garden in the early spring several years ago when the oak trees were just leafing out this beautiful, vivid, bright green. Signifies their color in the springtime before they darken during the summer months. So they can really add a lot of beauty to our lives and our gardens. So let's take a look at the value of the oaks in our region and around the world. There are over 100 known uses and benefits of oaks. First of all, as a keystone species, a single oak tree can be a mini ecosystem. Some animals depend on oaks to keep them safe from predators, while others use the branches, cavities, and bark itself for their homes. Bears, black-tailed deer, scrub jays, magpies, wood ducks, wild turkeys, quail, flickers, and acorn woodpeckers all depend on oaks for food. I've even seen a coyote carry off acorns. Insects feed on the leaves, twigs, acorns, bark, and wood of oak trees, which in turn, they become food sources for larger critters and birds. Oaks continue to be useful to wildlife even after they die. Salamanders, worms, snails, termites, and ants live in the decomposing logs and help turn wood into humus which of course enriches the soil again. And there are medicinal health benefits of oaks. Throughout history, they've used oak bark to heal wounds. And it's known to have an astringent quality. It's also known to have anti-inflammatory properties in sickness. Oaks provide shade and frost protection to your understory plants and also help to stabilize the soil on slopes. They exude heat during winter months that raise nearby air temperatures a few degrees and shelter your plantings against cold winds. Like all trees, oaks provide oxygen so we can breathe. That's pretty essential. And filter out pollutants from the air and the water. Researchers have found that one single oak tree can absorb up to 10 pounds of air pollution in a single year. In terms of climate resiliency, oaks sequester carbon in their mass as they grow. These large, long-lived trees convert huge quantities of carbon dioxide during their lifetimes into various organic compounds that make up wood. Oak canopies also mitigate the effects of global warming by reducing ground surface temperatures. In urban areas, oak trees provide protective shading for houses and people, lowering our energy costs. And finally, oaks provide an ideal environment for delicacies like chanterelle mushrooms, one of my favorites, and truffles, which you can find locally. Acorns for food, oak wine barrels, and construction materials for the housing and furniture industries. So if you've attended Master Gardener webinars in the past, you've seen this slide before. It's part of our standard offering here, and we refer to these cultural practices as good cultural care for the garden, for oak trees, for anything. So the first essential ingredient of our 4 foundations is soil. So soil is the basis for a healthy garden. It's home to an entire system of living things. You've got fungi, bacteria, earthworms, plant roots, all sorts of little very small insects, microscopic insects. So they all combine to keep our soil healthy and our plants and trees healthy. Water, consistent moisture in the soil is key. We all know that too much or too little water can be bad for plants. In healthy soil, water makes up about 25% of its volume. And air. Many people underappreciate the importance of air in our soil. That's the way trees breathe, is through the soil. And yet, without the pore spaces in the soil, which allow the plants to obtain oxygen and living things, and the living things that live in the soil to breathe, the plants, the trees, nothing will survive. So take care of those pore spaces. Don't compact the soil too much, because air also makes up about 25% of healthy soil volume. And finally, sunshine. Last but not least, energy from the sun is a driver for plant food and growth through photosynthesis in leaves. Just as for water, too much or too little sunshine can create problems. We'll talk about oak-related problems a little later on in our session here. Okay, let's take a look now at our 4 most common native oaks in Contra Costa County. The 4 local oaks that I wanted to focus here on are the most common are the coast live oak, or Quercus agrifolia, the valley oak, or Quercus lobata, the black oak, Quercus kilogii, and the blue oak, Quercus douglasii. So Quercus is an ancient Latin Celtic term, actually, meaning fine tree. Quer equals fine and ques equals tree. In the coast live oak Latin term, agrifolia means evergreen. So coast live oaks are evergreen trees. They lose their leaves, but they lose them kind of continuously throughout the year and are continuously rebuilding their leaf canopy. Valley oaks, on the other hand, are deciduous trees. And lobata means lobed leaves. They have deep grooves in their leaves, and you'll see that. Black oaks have been named after Albert Kellogg, a pioneering California biologist, and blue oaks, the scientific name, are named after the Scottish botanist David Douglas. So the coast live oak is an evergreen and has the thickest girth of all California oak varieties. The grand oak, actually, in Cherry Valley, which is in San Bernardino County, measures about 24 feet in diameter. That is one large tree trunk. Mature heights for coast live oaks can be from anywhere from 30 feet near the coast, where they are much smaller, to up to 80 feet in coastal valleys like Contra Costa, and can live typically around 250 years. But you saw where they can live far longer if they have ideal conditions. Most average 20 to 50 feet high and wide. A cousin of the coast live oak, the interior live oak, takes the place of the coastal variety in hotter, drier inland portions of Central California. And the only difference really is that it has longer, narrower acorns. They're pretty indistinguishable other than that. The valley oak, or lobata, is my favorite oak, actually, and I have numerous of these beautiful trees right out my window here. The valley oaks typically spread as wider than high, with heights typically in the 50 to 100 foot range. Valley oaks produce strong, thick lateral limbs that hold a lot of weight, and that's why they can spread so far and wide. And then have a relatively short tree trunk before they branch out to their main limbs. They prefer flatter terrain and with a deeper water table in order to grow to their maximum size. You see here a younger, healthy spreading valley oak in flat terrain. The California black oak, when growing by themselves, they'll form this globular shape that you see here. But in heavily forested areas, such as the Sierra Nevada, black oaks will grow straight up towards the sun and form a very high canopy of leaves and on a very long, naked limb and tree trunk. Their typical height is anywhere from 30 to 70 feet, and their width is 30 to 50 feet. Black oaks like water from winter rains or snow in the high country, but they tend to rot from the inside out if they stay too wet during the dry summer months. An interesting fact about black oaks is that they have the largest oak leaves in the world. Their leaves are up to 10 inches from base to tip. And finally, the blue oak. Now, understand there are many, many more varieties of oak trees in the state of California, but these are the four natives that are most common around us here. The blue oak, this is one of California's best suited deciduous oaks for hot, dry regions of the Coast Range and the Sierra foothills. And typically in Contra Costa, you'll find them from the slopes of Mount Diablo on eastward. They typically stand from 30 to 50 feet tall, so they're more compact than certainly than valley oaks, and they are deciduous. And they spread 40 to 60 feet, so they can be wider than tall. Blue oaks are found only in California and are the most drought tolerant of California's oaks. They can go dormant and drop their leaves in midsummer, like July, if they run out of water in the soil. So don't be misled into thinking that the tree has died. It hasn't. Their leaves turn a bluish color in those hot months, and they close up their evapotranspiration openings in their leaves to conserve water. And they conserve that water in their roots and their trunk and limbs. So they will spring back to life when it starts raining again. Another great aspect of blue oaks is that they have been found by scientists to be resistant to sudden oak disease, which is a very good thing these days. So zooming in for identifying our local oaks, I have four sets of photos here. The upper left two photos are the leaves and acorns of the coast live oak. You can see the three different leaves are quite different in size. The oak tree produces very small leaves at the top of its crown near where it has abundant sunlight. And as you delve further down deep into the tree, you have medium-sized leaves, and the lowest leaves are quite large to capture as much sunshine on their surface as they can. And you can see their acorns are sort of diminutive. They're usually around 3/4 of an inch to an inch long, more chubby. But some of the varieties, the inland oak tree is quite skinny. On the upper right, you have the Quercus lobata, or valley oak, and you can see these lobed leaves here, these deep cuts into the leaves, natural cuts. That's the lobata term. And their acorns are quite large. They can be dramatically large. I, in my trees, have seen 2.5, 3 inch long acorns and nearly as fat as that too. But these are more typical acorns that you'll find for valley oaks. In the lower left, we have the black oak leaves. Again, these can go from, oops, we can go from around 10 inches from tip to tip. And they have very distinctive acorns, round acorns that tend to hide inside of their acorn covering here, their cap, as they call it. So very distinctive. And then finally, in the lower right, we have the blue oaks, this very distinctive blue-green color that their oak leaves turn during the summer months. And their acorn is smaller and similar to the coast live oak in fatness and length. But oak trees are also fragile and are constantly under attack, especially in California these days. So we'll take a look at several of the most common diseases and a couple of what we call affinity plants. But first, let's take a look briefly at the anatomy of a tree trunk, because this is where the diseases really take their action from. So the anatomy of a tree trunk, this is how the tree manages to sustain itself, of course, and to keep itself straight up. So from the outside in, an oak tree's bark is thick and cork-like. In fact, the cork oak in Portugal and Western Spain has for hundreds of years been used to produce the corks used for wine bottles. Just inside the bark are the xylem layer that carries nutrients and water up from the roots into the leaves and branches, and the phloem layer that returns sugars and other food sources down to other parts of the tree and right into its root system and right out into the micro organisms in the soil. They actually feed the microorganisms, which is pretty cool. The oak tree produces its own food, like most plants, in the form of sugars. In the oak tree and most trees, we call that sap or pitch, and that promotes the growth. But the sap and pitch also pushes out invading insects, such as borers, tree borers, and feeds the microbiome in the soil. So supporting a mature tree's massive weight in the interior here is the softer growing sapwood here, and the older, very rigid heartwood. So like other trees, oaks produce a new ring of sapwood each growing season, which makes it easy to determine the tree's age. Well, this is an icky one here, oak root fungus, or Armillaria malea. So this is an endemic disease that exists wherever oaks exist. This is a fungal disease, and it's, many people call it oak root rot also. So it's evolved with the California oaks and other native plants. Oak root fungus attacks the sapwood just beneath the bark of the lower trunk and the roots of infected plants. This disrupts the flow of water up the xylem and down through the phloem and cuts off basically water and nutrients to the tree, leading to a slow decline in vigor. The armillaria can spread to other susceptible plantings around it, and the plantings may be more vulnerable and die more quickly from the harmful fungus than the oak tree. So you can see some of the signs here, the symptoms are these tightly clustered mushroom formations right around the root base of the tree. So the virus is contained actually by our naturally very dry summers. It cannot spread in dry weather. It needs wetness. So that's why you should be very cautious with watering around an oak tree's base, any of the oak tree's base in dry months. And here's sudden oak death, or Phytophthora ramorum. You've probably heard of sudden oak death, abbreviated SOD. It's a pathogen of oak trees caused by a non-native or invasive plant pathogen, Phytophthora ramorum. The genus Phytophthora encompasses over 100 species and has a long history of causing devastating plant diseases throughout the world, including the Great Potato Famine in Ireland from 1845 to 1852. It was caused by Phytophthora. P. ramorum was first discovered in California, though, in Marin County just in 1994. It continues to kill coast live oaks, tan oaks, and valley oaks in coastal California counties from Monterey to Humboldt, and in a small portion of southwestern Oregon now. It's estimated to have killed more than 1 million oak trees just during the past decade. In addition, more than 100 other plant species are susceptible to the pathogen, but most suffer only minor damage, limited to leaf spots or twig dieback. And this next slide covers the four hosts for sudden oak death that are the most common and the most dangerous to be around oak trees. So 100 plant species on the USDA APHIS host list are vulnerable to sudden oak death. But only a few key native and non-native plantings around oaks have been shown scientifically to be what's called foliar sporulating, or what that means is reproducing hosts. So many plants on that list will suffer from the disease, but not propagate it to oak trees. These four will, however. These four may not die of SOD themselves, but they spread the bloom spores from the pathogen to nearby oaks via rainfall and wind. So some of the commonly planted sporulating hosts: California bay, laurel, rhododendrons, camellias, and tan oaks themselves. And the tan oaks, unfortunately, die, but they spread the disease before they die. So an organization, one of my favorite organizations, it's called the California Oak Mortality Task Force, tracks the spread of this disease, and citizen scientists and observers are welcome to sign up for their regular newsletter emails. And I encourage you, if you're interested in more information about sudden oak death, to sign up for their regular newsletters. So I've provided contact information in my references section at the end of the session here today. Ominously, though, scientists have recently detected a second strain of P. ramorum in California oaks called the NA2 strain, meaning, of course, that the disease is now mutating. Here's a common example of an affinity plant. Mistletoe is not a pathogen to the oak trees, Mistletoe is called a hemiparasitic plant that grows on a wide variety of host trees, including oaks. The term hemiparasitic is used to indicate that the mistletoe plant carries out photosynthesis independently, but obtains its water and nutrients from the host tree. Mistletoe has a particular affinity for oaks in California, preferring less healthy or declining trees. The presence of mistletoe indicates that the tree is declining in vitality, so you should look for that. Poison centers report toxicity of the whole plant if ingested by humans, but especially the mistletoe berries. So if you have mistletoe around, it's okay to kiss under it, but don't drop it in your beverage or ingest it in any way. And mycorrhizal fungi, that's a mouthful. Mycorrhizal fungi is also prolific around oak trees, and it's a good thing because it's called a symbiote. So it's called a symbiote because it works in collaboration with oaks and is beneficial to an oak tree's good health and ultimately its survival. The tiny fungal threads here that are shown in this photo, which exist both externally and internally to the oak's root system, provide nutrients, increase the water intake, and form a layer of defense against disease-causing bacteria and other harmful fungi. The fungi filaments can essentially double the reach of an oak tree's roots for greater access to nutrients and water further out. In return, the tree provides the fungi with sugars to enhance its growth. So it actually feeds this fungi. If you see white fungi while digging around under an oak tree around its root system, don't assume that the white filaments are harmful to the tree. They're probably mycorrhizal, and they're beneficial to your tree. Okay, so now we'll discuss some gardening under and around oaks, and we'll start off with some do's and don'ts of gardening near oaks. And then a little later, I'll discuss suggested plantings that work well with oaks and some that don't work so well that you should avoid. So number one consideration is consider an oak tree's mature size. You can see from these two photos, the oak tree on the left, again in my local neighborhood here, is easily 90 feet, maybe even 100 feet tall. I had to stand way back on the street to get the oak tree fully in my camera shot. And you can see how it dominates the local homes along here. It also dominates what you can plant and not plant underneath it or next to it. The valley oak on the right here grows in a public walking pathway and has plenty of room to spread. And that's good because valley oaks are often as wide as they are tall. And you can see that somebody, we'll talk about trimming, but it has a very open growth pattern to its tree canopy. So it provides dappled sun and shade to the plants underneath. It's not a dense shade, it's a very light, high shade, as we call it. Another consideration is water. With California's regular cycles of drought and an oak tree's sensitivity to overwatering during our dry months, we always need to consider water and irrigation. What can we do to help protect them? Well, three options come to mind. Infrequent deep watering, especially during late season heat waves, mulching to preserve the soil moisture, or just let the tree find its own water sources in the soil and adjust to our climate. After all, they've done that successfully for 65 million years. So deep watering, though, if your tree is young, or if you do a soil test and go down 12 to 18 inches into the soil, and the soil is dry and crumbly, your tree is basically out of water. So deep watering of a drought-stressed tree is accomplished by moving a hose under the canopy of the tree during the daytime for 1 or 2 days at a low flow or even a trickle, such that the water percolates slowly into the soil. For a mature tree, only do this once or twice, though, during late summer to early fall in drought and only in drought years. Mulching, and you see mulch around the base of this tree in the photo. Mulch is an inexpensive approach to water management, especially in drought years, with the goal of conserving the existing soil moisture as much as possible. Mulching under the tree helps stabilize moisture levels, keeps the soil cool, and suppresses weed growth. Do you ever wonder why your mulch just disappears, though, after 3 to 5 years? Well, wood-chipped mulch is actually food to all those valuable soil microorganisms that help promote oak tree vitality. So the microorganisms in this tree's root system are eating this carbon-based soil and turning it into nitrogen and releasing other nutrients. It's freeing up nutrients for the oak tree's roots. So I'm a big advocate of mulching, as are many of my master gardener colleagues. Now, when we consider planting round oaks, we have to talk about the understory. What is the understory exactly? So, first of all, it's the combination of total leafy crown spread here above the ground, but also we're talking about the total spread of an oak's root system. So you can see from this diagram that the root system, especially with its fungal symbionts, extends well beyond the leafy drip line here. This is the drip line on either side of the tree canopy. So for good cultural practices, don't plant anything within about 4 to 6 feet from the base of the tree, from the tree's root crown. Regularly irrigate the plantings would result in too wet conditions around the root crown and make it more prone to root rot. So keep that open, mulch it, gravel, nice benching, something like that, but keep it unplanted and unirrigated. So from 6 feet out to the drip line, plant native bunch grasses such as California fescues, wild rye, blue gammas, purple needlegrass. You can also work with Douglas irises, sedums, native ferns, creepers, yerba buena, geraniums even, and low understory trees. But again, make sure that you're talking about low water use plantings. And beyond the drip line out here, you can have native perennials. They work really well out there. And I'll have a list of all of these plants coming up soon. And the references have some great resources online for you to follow the link and get great palettes of plants for working with oak trees. So here are some do's of planting around oaks, what we call cultural practices. And this ensures, we hope, an oak's good health over time. So if you're planting a new tree, first make sure that the soil drainage in the planting area is good. Eliminate low spots that would collect too much water around the proposed tree trunks, and grade the immediate area into a small slope away from the planting spot. As we've said, consider the eventual size of a mature tree that it's going to be in 10 to 20 years, and hold on to leaf litter that falls throughout the summer underneath the oak. In the summer and fall months, it'll provide natural mulch for you, and it'll have all those benefits of retaining soil moisture and keeping the soil cool. and feeding the microorganisms. English ivy has been confirmed as a reservoir for bacterial leaf scorch, which is a harmful pathogen that affects a wide variety of native and ornamental trees, including oaks. So my advice is, keep ivy certainly off your tree trunk, and I recommend keeping it out of your garden altogether. So look to the native habitat out in our native woodlands when deciding where to plant your tree, and the plantings under and around your oaks too. For example, valley oaks love wetter, flatter areas in your garden. Coast live oaks thrive on warmer, drier hillsides. Black oaks prefer moist, north-facing slopes. And blue oaks in Contra Costa love hot, dry inland areas, like I said, Mount Diablo and east. The understory plants will receive more sun on the south and the west sides of oak trees. But remember, if you're planting valley oaks, it'll be a dappled, filtered sunshine. This tree that's in the photo is a coast live oak, and the coast live oak shade is far denser than valley oaks. So take care to weed around the area frequently. It steals nutrients, and protect the roots by not driving on, which compacts the soil, or rototilling in the root zone. So if there are do's of planting, there are, of course, don'ts of planting. So what practices should we avoid? Well, don't over-irrigate under and around the canopy or allow irrigation to repeatedly splash on the base of the tree, particularly coast live oaks. This poor oak in this photo is surrounded by a sea of lawn. So you got to know that it's going to have pretty wet surroundings in that small space that they've provided around the tree trunk. So don't over irrigate around the canopy or allow irrigation to repeatedly splash on the base of this tree, especially coast live oaks. They don't like that. So don't till or disc under an oak tree, because disking disturbs and possibly even destroys the microorganisms, the beneficial microorganisms, and destroy your shallow roots also. Don't build up soil or allow mulch or leaf clutter to build up around the base of the tree trunk. Keep that root base free and at the same level that it was originally planted in. Don't compact the soil with heavy traffic, with machinery, or with structures. Structures compact the soil pretty crazily. It, of course, causes root damage, cuts off water sometimes, and you have soil that will be oxygen depleted. Don't severely prune or pollard an oak tree to reduce the canopy. Consider lifting the canopy up to 10 feet or more off the ground to prevent fires from spreading up into its crown. And consider windowing the branches. If you have dead growth up in the canopy, take that out, of course, but free up some windows of sunlight to come down through your deciduous oaks. And I've seen very effective prunings of coast live oaks that way too. Don't add plants with high water, sun, or nutrient requirements. And of course, don't plant anything that'll spread sudden oak death to your tree. So when you talk about planting wisely around oak trees, here's a local example that I ran into last week while I was being turned into a pincushion getting vaccines at Kaiser Permanente in Walnut Creek. This is their broad courtyard out in front of the hospital, and there are two deciduous valley oak trees here that they've done a marvelous job of protecting. You can see in the nearer oak here that they've left a space easily 8 to 10 feet of blank soil and then constructed circular benching around that to keep people out and machines out to protect it from compaction also that way. These oaks probably predated the hospital, so they're being very careful to preserve them. What they also did was added these Mediterranean and California native low water use plantings in the sunny areas, and away from the tree drip lines. So the photo stretches this small lawn, natural lawn in the foreground. It's actually quite small, maybe around 1,000 square feet, and it's quite far removed from the base of the oak tree. Oh, shoot. Sorry about that. And this is also a fire-safe landscape because the plantings are arranged in islands, as you can see, separated by either decomposed granite or by a paved walkway. This minimizes the spread of any ground-based fires. This is another lovely front garden in that I pass by just about every day in Burton Valley here. Uh, the local homeowner has a towering valley oak, obviously predated the home. This oak is probably 150 or so years old. The lawn has a 4 to 5 foot separation between it and the tree's root crown. Although in my opinion, the watered lawn is probably still a couple feet too close. So they've used understory trees such as a Japanese maple on the right, a privet closer to the house, and several dogwoods on the left, which you can't see in this photo. This next photo, you'll be able to see that. The understory trees are generally kept low, and the oak has been well trimmed high, with deadwood periodically removed from the canopy. And a closer in shot here of the left side, you can see some of the ground landscaping under this magnificent oak. Between the cool season lawn and home, there are low bushes and ground cover, many of which are on the next slide's list, including Douglas iris, Mahonia or Oregon grape, low water daylilies, small leaf vinca or vinca minor, it's called, native bunch grasses, and a manzanita leaning out toward the morning sun over here on the left. I took this photo in the afternoon, so it's shady there right now. The larger plantings are spaced nicely apart from each other to resist the spread of ground-based fire. So this is well planned and executed. The only change I'd suggest, I think, would be to replace this camellia in the background. This is a camellia bush near the wall. It's in the drip line of the tree, and as you know now, camellias are foliar sporulating or spreading host of sudden oak death disease. So here's some, I am not anywhere close to a landscape designer, but I can point you to a few California native plantings that I know work well. They work well in my garden, and they should work well in your garden too. You can find most of these in our local oak woodlands. If you take a hike in Briones or some of our regional parks. In the terms of trees, you have California sycamores. These are all natives. The Pacific madrone or the arbutus trees, Western redbud, and California buckeye. For shrubs and ground covers, you can consider Douglas iris, California lilacs or ceanothus, Oregon grape again, hummingbird sage, ferns of all types, Native viburnums. I love our native plantings, but I'm not a natives only guy. Also, I think complementary to oak trees, there's some great non-natives out there too, including Japanese barberries, Japanese rose or Carya japonica, and Andromeda plants, which I've found to be um, very compatible with shade of oak trees and also deer resistant. That's an important um, consideration when planting around oaks. Andromedas are of the Pyrus family, Pieris, and they are on the list. So there are tons of other great compatible plantings for native oaks, but I'll check out the online resource links that follow and are included in my handout. Some plants to avoid are, of course, sudden oak death disease spreaders, such as California bay laurel, rhododendron, camellias, tan oaks. It's also unwise for your oak understory to have any sun-loving, water-intensive plant choices in the understory. They're great outside of the understory in the periphery. Or plants with high nutrient requirements, such as roses, hydrangeas, lawns, or non-native annuals like tulips. Any plants that don't provide habitat for wildlife and add considerable fuel load to wildfires aren't really all that desirable. Invasive, non-native plants that can alter the soil composition, spread uncontrollably, harbor pests, or even injure your pets or kids. I have Mexican feathergrass in this photo. Mexican feathergrass has been known to land a lot of dogs and cats in the veterinary hospital. And we've talked about ivy, but I'll say it again. Ivy will attach to and invade the tree bark, steal vital nutrients from, or spread disease to your oaks. So remove the ivy from your garden, as well as other nuisance and fire hazard plants such as coyote brush. And of course, a plant that loves oak woodlands, poison oak. You probably don't want poison oak around in your garden either. Okay, so here are some planting resources for oaks. I include the California Oaks Organization, a couple. I have another link on the next page. They have a very nice list of compatible plants that you can plant around oak trees. And general oak references, you have a link to the California Oak Mortality Task Force. And again, these are on my handout.